Hello, welcome to Any Cool News. I am talking with some of the creative talent behind The Daily Show. Let's start with Daniel, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, what you do, your tenure there, and how many Emmys you have.
Yeah, my name is Daniel Radosh. I am a producer and senior writer here. I've been on the show almost 16 years. Um, so I don't want to say I have too many Emmys to fit in my bathroom medicine cabinet, but that is where I keep them.
And Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren Beckett Jackson. I'm a video editor here at The Daily Show, and I've been here for just under 5 years. And I've got two Emmy nominations under my belt, and just very, very excited at just the idea of being nominated is still killer. So,
Absolutely. Now, Lauren, I was thinking about your role as video editor, and I looked at your reel, and it looks amazing.
oh, thanks.
But my question is, like, since the show is filmed almost in a live format. What is your role once taping begins? Or do you do all your stuff beforehand for the segments, or are you very active while the show is being taped as well?
So the answer is yes to both. It depends on what segment I'm assigned to on a given day. We don't know usually until we get in. It's kind of just the way the news cycle is. So if I'm on headlines, I might be working on the rolls. A lot of the news clips that you're seeing at the top of the show, those will be cut beforehand. We'll make changes to them. We'll kind of tighten them up. And then I might also be responsible on the back end after taping from solidifying all of those, making sure there's no mistakes, there's no issues, and getting it out the door. But that can change if I'm assigned to a field piece where, the air date might be a week away. And so I have the full day to be working with my producer on getting that finished. So it kind of depends on what you're assigned to, but there's always something. And it does make the job very much more exciting because you just have no idea what it's going to be like, and every day is very different.
Yeah, one
Um,
thing that I would point out, sorry, is that you said, well, the show is kind of aired, basically live to tape. I mean, a big chunk of the show is, but a big chunk of the show is not. We have, sketches and pre-recorded field pieces, like Lauren mentioned, where you got a correspondent on the street, or we'll sometimes do a quick man on the street for that day, where we'll just send somebody out doing interviews. We've got ad parodies and all kinds of different video pieces. So the editors and the writers and everybody is working on not just kind of what people think of as the Daily Show, where it's the host talking to camera, but all these other little bits and pieces that are either a whole act or maybe just something that goes online. But it's really a lot of variety, which keeps it exciting for us.
yeah. Um, Back to Lauren in terms of editing for the show, and hold on, let me let someone else in. Boop. In terms of editing for the show and like going through news clips and such, I mean, do you have a very thick Bible of standards and practices as far as like what you can show and what you have to blur, and especially like you guys kind of toe the line between cable and premium. Tell me about some of the restrictions or limitations there.
Yeah, so I know we have a legal team too that's here that kind of just makes sure that we don't air anything that we're not allowed to. So I think like there's like the kind of the very obvious things like we don't have certain curse words on the show. I know we are late night, but there's still things we can't say, and so we have to kind of make sure that those don't fall through the cracks. There's still blurring that's involved. There's
We
also
can't show entire NFL games in the second act. For
exactly
some
the
reason, that's
sports.
not allowed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Much as you
sports
want
is
to.
really annoying, especially now with the Knicks doing so well. It is difficult to do something like Sports Wars and not be able to show everything that you want to be able to see a play-by-play and stuff like that. So there are certain things that we have to keep in check. And then we have so many checks and balances throughout the show because we have legal looking at stuff. Our directors, our producers are checking and fine-tuning stuff. Our supervising producers are. So there's always extra eyeballs to make sure that we're kind of staying top of line. And that goes for a lot of different facets of the show. It's just that we want to make sure we're making the best product. And at the same time, we're kind of keeping everything above board. So there are a lot of technical things too that we just kind of have to like keep in check. We have screenings every night, the whole show, to make sure that there's all these quality control checks are taken care of. There's no audio dropouts. If it goes to the NOC and it gets kicked back for some reason, we have editors here that are standing by at 9 o'clock at night to make sure that everything goes out right. Like we have a deadline every night. And so kind of making sure that we have enough people here, and there's a lot of dedicated people that are here late to make sure the show gets out. And that's definitely part of the post process for sure.
Yeah. Now, Daniel, speaking of there's a lot of people, there are a lot of big personalities at The Daily Show. And as a writer, do you write to the personality, or do you allow the script, the presenter to put their personality into the script, or is it not so binary?
No, I mean, we definitely, it's so actually really great because, like I said, I've been here for a long time. It's here through a lot of the first John era, and then through Trevor's whole term, and then we had this whole run of guest hosts, and now we've got all these different, hosts, and each one of them has not only their own opinions and ideas, but their own comedic voice. And we will definitely start with what is their idea, what is their take on a story or on the news of the day, and then on a sort of micro level, say, well, how do we take these jokes and say it the way that they would say it? And so we're always kind of thinking like, oh, like Michael Costa, kind of thinks of themselves like, I'm kind of the common sense guy, right? Like I don't, pretend to be like deep in the weeds on like how Congress works the way that, maybe John or Jordan Klepper are. But I'm the guy who can kind of say like, does that really make sense? And it's like, oh, that's a different angle for us to take. So it's really works in two levels. It is that, that higher level of like, what's the big thought that this host has? And then what's the kind of comedic way that they express that? And it's totally different for each one. And it does really keep us on our toes. But it does make it very fun.
Yeah. An increasing amount of people are getting their actual news from this style of show.
Hey, that's on them.
Well, I was going to ask, like, knowing that, because I know you know that, there's a comedy part of you and there's a journalist part of you. Do you ever feel any impetus to maybe hold back the joke for sake of information, or vice versa?
Well, we're a comedy show. I mean, we're a comedy show. We're a news comedy show. So usually when we're giving the information, which we certainly do, and I think you actually can get a lot of information and news from the show. But our goal when we're giving that information is usually what information do people need to have so that they're on board with the comedy that we're doing, with the jokes that we're making, and the comedic premise that we have. You have to be able to understand. So right now we're talking about, Donald Trump just or Congress passed Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill, right? So we got to tell you some of what's in it because we want to make jokes about it. We're not going to tell you everything that's in it because, if you really want to know that, you're probably going to have to read the newspaper. Like if we don't have a joke about it, we don't necessarily need to get it into the, 15 minutes that we have to talk about it. So yeah, you can get information from our show. And I think, we do a really good job of making sure that the information that we give is accurate and fair. But we can't and don't try to give all the news of the day because that's not what we're here for.
And just to add to that, I think I actually just got a text from a cousin of mine who was saying that like she just watches The Daily Show for her news now. And so it is a sentiment that I get a lot. And I think part of it is because, like Radosh was saying, we are a comedy news show. But there's at least an element of when you wake up in the morning, you see all these headlines that are very, very scary. At the very least, we can soften that blow a little bit by pointing out some hypocrisy, by pointing out something that doesn't quite sit right, or isn't that kind of strange? And I think that is what helps us kind of get through a lot of these harder days that we seem to be having. It's just a very volatile time right now, and some things just are really hard to be funny about. But I think we do a really good job of towing that line and trying our best to deliver what can be really scary with a spoonful of sugar.
Yeah, exactly. Like in a lot of cable news, the way that they keep you watching is to keep you scared and anxious,
So.
which is certainly, one way to do it. But we can give you at least a lot of that same information, but in a way that makes you feel like, you know what, I can get through this, or at least other people are experiencing this with me, or I'm not the only one who's being driven crazy by this. Um, so yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like, in that sense, we're probably performing something of a service for people who don't want to get their news the pure scary way.
Well, and also it's something of a distillation because again, you only write about the things you can have a joke for. So it's not all the news. But speaking of all the news and the news cycle, Lauren, when you're sourcing things or things are getting sourced and put on your desk, do you ever get pushback from the other news sources that you're quoting or you're like re-airing their segments? Do you ever get any pushback from any of those
Um,
sources?
I can't say that I have, to be honest. I think that what we do, I think that we don't try to misconstrue what we're kind of giving out to the public. We're not here to kind of put words in people's mouths. We're quoting. And so a lot of the times there's not much that I think could really be said about what we're putting out there because we're sourcing it, the proper way. I think that we're not in a position where I think we want to misinform people or to misconstrue information. I think we're in an age where everything gets misconstrued, like we're kind of in this anti-news era where no one really trusts where they're getting their information from. And so I think to abuse that would be not in our best interest. And so we do a good job of trying to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so I personally haven't had that experience. And I think it's a testament to, our work ethic.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about presenting the truth and then having it interpreted, because a lot of people believe that The Daily Show is a very left-leaning show.
Mhm.
Whereas I see it as more of a truth and reasonability
Mhm.
aspect. If the truth is constantly being interpreted, what is the point of the two-party system if we don't have a binary idea of what is empirical?
I think it's a really great question. I think that the benefit of having John back at the show is that he's using a lot of these Act Ones as a call to action. I think in the very beginning when he first came back and throughout this election season, it's been to point out that we can no longer point fingers at the other and say, "Hey, you're the problem, you're the enemy." We have to start looking inward and kind of taking accountability for where we are as a society. And so I think that's a very powerful notion to make on a comedy show and to still kind of give people some kind of hope, but remind people that they need to start taking action, and start kind of thinking about what we're hearing and interpreting and, how much of that are we just parroting what we're hearing pundits say on the news, what we're hearing our parents, our grandparents say at the dinner table, who are we going to be in the next 5 to 10 years? And when you think about our show, I think that we have done a great job of trying to be bipartisan. We go for the liberal side just as much as the conservative side on the show. I think probably more so this year that we've attacked a lot of Dems this year. And I think that that is a testament to the fact that we're not trying to kind of tell you what to think. We just want to point in the direction, and have you make that decision for yourself.
Yeah, and the thing that I would add to that, I mean, I think that's exactly right. And the thing I would add is that, going back to what I was saying about having all these different hosts with different voices, it really actually kind of shows you, or at least it shows us, and I hope it comes through on the air, is that, we talk about like the two different sides, but there are really so many different sides. Like each of our hosts, even when they are kind of more or less aligned in certain ways, has a different political perspective on things. And so we really can't get locked into one point of view because we are trying to help all these different people who might have different ideas show what their version of it is. So it keeps us flexible, on the back end. But I think also, I hope that for viewers, if you watch, Jordan Klepper and then you watch, Ronnie Chang and then Jon Stewart, you'll see like, oh, maybe, even for people who would say, well, overall, The Daily Show is liberal, like there's a lot of variety and texture within that. So we're, beyond like listening with an open mind to all the voices, which we certainly do, the voices that we put on the air also have a lot of variety and a lot of different opinions. And, I think that's one of the things that makes, a show like this so much fun and such a challenge to work on.
All right. I think I have about time for one more question. I don't want to take your whole day. This is going to be for both of you. I'll get Lauren's answer first, followed by Daniel's. We're about halfway through the year. What is the over-under that John's going to split his hand open in a fit of rage again?
I'm hoping that won't be repeated, workers' comp and everything. I just feel like we need him to be in one piece. And that goes for everyone at the show. I know we have some moments where we have props and stuff on stage and we do a lot of crazy stuff. And so fingers crossed it doesn't happen again, but good on him for letting the show go on.
Yeah, one of the great things about John that he's just so much fun to work with and like game for anything that the week after he, you're referring to the time when he accidentally, we did not plan it at all, smashed a ceramic mug that we didn't think could be smashed and managed to cut his hand. And then the next week we did another joke where he was going to do a spit take, but this time we gave him one of those big plastic sippy cups and didn't even like acknowledge it. It was just that if you were paying attention, you know why we're only letting John have a plastic sippy cup from now on.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate the time, and you're doing great work. Please keep it up.
All
Thanks so
right,
much,
thank you.
Eric.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.